Hey, so I'm getting ready to teach this lumbar spine and abs workshop on Thursday evening and had a bunch of thoughts about it that I wanted to share. So just kind of to preface, originally I wanted to teach this workshop to follow up on the Jedi Spine Tricks, which was a 2.5-hour workshop that I taught all about teaching trainers and people who want to get more into their bodies simple ways of accessing and understanding what's going on and creating movement where there wasn't movement. We had so much material to cover that I did a little bit for the pelvis, but we really kind of skipped over the lumbar spine and a bunch of breathing exercises that I had that helped to connect to the abs from the inside. So I decided just to drop that in this week on Thursday from 5 to 6:30 p.m. If you're interested, there's a live stream at 5 to 6:30 p.m. and you can also get the 7-day replay. But more so, what I wanted to talk about was realizing as I was putting together the material for this workshop, how much of it relates to postpartum work and why. So I found this vertebrae in Big Sur this weekend. It's a deer vertebrae, it's not human, but it gives you a good idea of how the spine is created. So I don't know if you can see these spongy bits. That's it. When you're alive, it's like a fluid connection and there's nerves that run through that and they come out in various ways off the spine. And there's muscles that attach all the way around these vertebrae. Everywhere that you see a little spine thing here, that's essentially a joint, like it's a possibility for movement. And it stacks up this way. So this indication in the back here, those are the knobs of the vertebrae that you feel in your back. But your actual spine is located in the center of your body. That's where I want to start because we oftentimes hear about how having a strong core can help your back. And this is why. It's because everything from this point on forward is your anterior chain, which is usually how we're talking about the strong core. It's like the abs. And then back here, this is your posterior chain. This is your back. And these muscles interact to help to mobilize your spine. It's not one or the other. So on the back, you have your lats are kind of, they come off your arms and they go all the way down like a big wing triangle to your lower back. Which is why, if you stretch your arms up, you can sometimes feel stretching all the way down to the lower back. Then you have Quadratus Lumbora, which is a rectangular muscle that goes from the bottom of the ribs down to the top of the hips. And that can help to lift your hips up and down. And if you don't have access to hip mobility, it will also take your hips around when you walk, but it can cause like a pinching feeling in the back. There are others. I'm not going to give you an extensive list of all the muscles in the body right now. Just kind of want to illustrate what goes on. So imagine you have your spine in the center. You've got these muscles in your back that typically will work by contracting. So when muscles contract, they will get shorter and they'll kind of ball up. So back muscles help you do things like back extension. Then you have all of your abdominal muscles in the front. And back to this, your transverse abdominis, which is the one that people talk about a lot when they're like, pull it back and in. And it's also, if you see someone like inhale and they hold their breath and their stomach's in, but their chest is puffed out, they've kind of pulled their transverse back by default there. That one actually attaches right beside the spine here and here. And in front, fascially, it connects to the side of your rectus abdominis. You have your psoas that's coming down. We're talking about the lumbar spine here, so that's where the psoas attaches. It comes down to the front, attaching to each vertebrae, and it sandwiches up against the Quadratus Lumbora in the back. So they work together around this one like a panini, a melted sandwich moving. And if the psoas is working well, then your Quadratus Lumborum doesn't have to work so hard and it's happy. Your obliques, the external obliques come from the ribs and attach to the hips. They do things like this. That's why when you see people doing crunches on the side, they're working their waist muscles, that's the obliques. The internal obliques go from the opposite rib to the opposite hip and the pubic bone, so they cross over the body, right? Side crunches. And then you have your rectus abdominis in front, which is this massively compartmented one that is the 6 or the 8 pack, depending on the level of body fat you have. That one flexes forward and it pulls ultimately your xiphoid process towards your pubic bone. So think about these all in the context of mobilizing the spine. And all of these muscles are serving to help the spine move in different directions. And we want to have is a balance of strength between the front and the back, and the sides, so that no matter what direction we're going in, we're not, now I'm going to use my fist to be vertebrae, we're not squashing the discs or hurting the fluid sacs that live in between each vertebrae. That's a different conversation, but that kind of protects our nerves from feeling hurt. You don't want to squash them. You want to be moving in such a way that you're protecting the length of your spine, which requires a healthy interaction between your abdominal muscles and your back muscles. This is where I wanted to get into how important this is for postpartum work. Diastasis recti is a separation of the linea alba, which is the fascial strip that goes in between your 6 or your 8 pack. It can separate all the way, it can separate on the top or on the bottom. And that's because you were growing a human and the muscles were stretching. And at some point, the muscles were overstretching, and so the fascial tissue itself began to separate. Absolutely possible to reconnect it. And even if cosmetically, it won't ever entirely close, that really depends on your body, you can create movement around it, and you can do movements to bring that back together. And for someone who hasn't been pregnant, that also involves just strengthening your core. I've heard a lot of pregnant women tell me, I lost all my abdominal muscles, or I don't have my abdominal muscles anymore. You do. They did not vaporize. They stretched, and muscles are supposed to stretch, and they will come back. But you want to learn how to use them to contract back in. And so here's a big difference, because typically, if we're working the abdominals, I shouldn't say typically, sometimes, we'll just pretend I'm lying on the floor here, you'll see people do a crunch, and they push out. And that is a flexion of the abdominals, and I can push out in every single way. But that's moving my abdominals away from the spine. So as far as supporting the spine, that is less supportive because they're not moving in the same direction. And as far as reconnecting your abdominals after you've gone through having a baby, you want to be moving in the opposite direction, because if you're pushing out, it's going to be pushing the contents of your stomach through the places that you are weaker. So this is where all the other muscles come into play. And often they'll talk about the transverse pulling back to engage. Well, yes, that happens and it's good for your spine, but more so, if you're working to reconnect diastasis recti, you would want to be careful that when you pull your transverse back, hopefully you can actually see this on me. You're not doing this, sucking in and getting broad, but you're actually connecting and getting narrower. So it's the difference between just vacuuming your transverse abdominis back and then flexing it wide, which actually would separate this strip a little more. Because remember, it attaches fascially to each side of your rectus abdominis. You would be pulling it back and also connecting your obliques in and across. And that's going to help you create a situation where your muscles are working together to integrate and re-seam themselves, for lack of a better word. So the workshop on Thursday, it's open to all levels. It's going to be great for trainers, it's going to be great for doulas, anyone who works with people who need to connect with more integrity and, in a sense, more softness to the inside of their bodies around the lumbar spine. And that could be you. It could be that you have back issues, or you're working to heal something in your own body, or you know someone. Anyhow, yeah, it's open to all levels. It doesn't require any special equipment. We always use balls and blocks and bands, or we just substitute whatever you have on hand. You can register through my website, it's dominianne.com, look under workshops, and then just keep on clicking for the Empire Strikes Back. I do hope I see you there, and reach out, DM me if you have any questions. I love to talk about this. Okay, I hope that helped. Bye.